Hi HR Nation, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where I explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today we've got a special guest on the show. We're joined by Erika Ferszt, who is a stress specialist, neuroscience postgraduate, award-winning creative executive, burnout survivor, and founder of Moodally. Did I say the company name right?
You did right, yes.
Did
Moodally.
I? I'm so proud of myself now because I was like, I said it and I was like, I got to get that right. Before we go any further.
Also add mom and wannabe master chef. But
wannabe. Those are the two most important things, and we missed them out as well.
I know. It's professional. It was LinkedIn.
It's funny because I do that on some of the social accounts. I say, number one job, dad. It's a bit like cheesy, right? It's like, oh, all right, Chris.
You're that guy.
You're that guy. Yeah, you know. And people are like, oh, he's so nice. He said dad.
Entrepreneur, husband, father.
That's literally how it goes as well. Before we go any further, I obviously said a lot there. Tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally and your journey to where we are now.
Okay, I'll try and be as concise as possible. I am a talker, I do warn you. I am originally from New York. I grew up in New York. I moved to Milan, Italy when I was 24 years old. My background is in advertising, and in 2005, I joined Ray-Ban, which is owned by an Italian company, as their global head of advertising, media, and digital. And I was there for 10 years. Best job you could ever hope for. I had a great brand. I had great bosses. I had a great team. It was like one of my favorite time in my life. Towards the end, I'd been there for 10 years, and it's hard to work at that level constantly. Like, I have a daughter, and I had team members in China and Australia. So I was like always traveling. I could have lived on a plane if I wanted to, but I was always condensing everything so that I could be home as much as possible. And after 10 years of that, you get really tired. And I was like 41 at the time, 40, 41, 42. And all of my friends were from work. Like, I didn't have a social life outside of work. My daughter was about to be an adolescent. And I remember when I was an adolescent, I got into a lot of trouble because there were no eyes on me. So I just kind of wanted to like be around as she moved into that age. And it was just like, how long can I do? Like, I also wanted to write a second chapter, professional second chapter for myself. And I knew that if I stayed there a lot longer, that it would be difficult. So I had already started to kind of like take steps back. I had cut down my work week. I cut down some other things. And one morning I woke up and I had no vision in my right eye. And
oh my God.
Yeah, freaked me out. Now I was like, well, at first it started off as like a flicker. So I was like, I didn't drink last night. I don't know. The sun was out. So I thought maybe it was something like that, but I was really having like, I couldn't tell. And I kept covering one eye to see what was going on. And I remember sitting in this super important meeting with like 15 lawyers where we're reading through this contract and we have to go through it line by line. And I'm sitting there like doing this thing of like, can I see, can I not see? And they're looking at me like I'm absolutely insane. And at the same time, I'm also Googling what it is because everyone on my mother's side, so my maternal grandparents, died early of strokes. So I thought,
that's scary.
So I was convinced this was a pre-stroke, also because they say, like, never consult Dr. Google. But I was checking it and they were saying that, loss of vision can be a mini stroke. So I leave this meeting and I go straight to one of the medical places that we have here. And I go through a whole thing of tests. Anyway, they end up checking me into the hospital for 10 days, run so many tests, and they can't find anything, which was good news. But I have to say, after being poked and prodded, like was it Clockwork Orange? I was done. Anyway, after a couple more years of that, they finally came to the conclusion, we're like, keeping everything in mind and your blood work and this, that, and the other, we really think it was stress related and that was a burnout episode. Now, I had already left the company at this point because I was like, I need to take care of my health. Something is clearly off. And I took a couple of years to sort of like decant. And then one thing sort of led to another, and I got an ad on my phone, thank you, Facebook, for the Neuroscience of Mental Health postgraduate program. And I was like, yet. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but I know that this is like where my interest lies. So I signed up. And while I was taking it, we started to study stress and how stress works and how mental health works and the power of your thoughts and the power of your brain and your brain dynamics and blah, blah, blah. And basically what it comes down to is, now the hippies have kind of been saying this for a very long time, and the neuroscience kind of now shows it, that your thoughts command, it's like how we communicate with the rest of our body. So if you think happy and you're thinking happy, then it sends signals to the rest of the body to be happy. If you think angry, it does the exact same thing. And all the systems in the body overlap. So, you affect one and it has a domino effect on the other. And a lot of the times, that's why I said, I don't understand how my eye loss has to do with stress. And they're like, well, it's actually quite simple. Maybe you have like vitamin deficiency. It's destroyed the myelin sheath around your optic nerve. That blocks communications. And so it's like stress shows up in the body as, it can be an illness, it can be a mental illness. There was one study that we looked at where 20% of the people that had presented with depression actually had a vitamin D or vitamin B deficiency. So all this stuff is overlapping, and at the head of it, or at the top of it, is your thoughts. And so the idea was that if you can control your thoughts, or at least intentionally direct them, that you can actually shut off your stress response. And I dug into it, and they use this technique called mood induction in emotion research, because obviously you can't test emotions in a real life situation. You'd have to have like a team of scientists waiting for you to be in like a good mood or a bad mood. So they bring you into a clinical setting and they show you materials that are designed to put you in a specific mood. And that can be to piss you off or make you angry or make you sad, make you anxious. There's lots of different techniques. And then once those techniques they do their test, and then they show you another mood induction, which puts you back into a neutral mood. So I was saying, well, if you can do that in a clinical setting, why can't you do that in a real life setting, right? If something it doesn't have to be content that made me mad, but if you can watch something that puts me back in a neutral mood, I could use that for real. So I dig into what this mood induction stuff is, and it turns out it's creative materials, right? Like videos and
I was about to say, when I'm feeling anxious, I watch comedy.
Yeah. And that's one of
stand-up.
That's one of the absolute best ways, also because laughter and humor is the most contagious emotion there is, and it comes fast. And so I was like, it was one of those, not one of those moments because they haven't happened frequently, but I was like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life, because my experience is in making creative materials. That's my award-winning creative background.
Oh, I see the link now. Oh, there's two links, but yeah.
There's two links. And to help protect other people in the workplace environment because the best way to deal with burnout and stress is prevention. And enable people to improve their stress. Now, the beauty on top of all of this is by so doing, learning how to emotionally self-regulate, you not only teach yourself that as a habit, which helps you to protect it works as a buffer against mental illness, depression, anxiety, and stress-related issues, but it also improves your creativity and your productivity. So from a business point of view, from a work or a workplace employer point of view, the smart thing is to have employees who don't get mad, who do get mad. It's not about not getting, you can never take the stress away. It's about learning how to shut it off. Stress is there for a reason. We're alive because we have a response that is automatic to a threat. The problem is that today, the same threat of somebody pulling a gun at us is also when somebody takes the last bagel at Starbucks and we had our eyes on it, So we react the same way for two totally different things.
Yeah.
So that was a very long answer to your brief question.
That's it. Podcast finished. Done.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, bye. Yeah. The big problem is most companies focus on signposting people when it's too late. Right. So a lot of the resources in place is to help people once they've already got, they're treating the symptoms, not the problem.
And those, they're called tertiary interventions. By the time you've gotten to that stage, it's very expensive for the employer and it's very damaging for the employee, because at this point, like I said, since stress is systemic, it's showing up somewhere else. So you definitely have collateral damage that takes a very long time and a lot of faith and a lot of consistency to get over. So you don't just burn out and then like 2 weeks, you're like, I'm cool. You have to reset your adrenal glands. You have to learn how to manage your cortisol levels, and you have to do it constantly, because now it's like you've kind of blown a fuse. So it's still there. You could blow it again quite easily. You don't want to overload the circuit. So it's the best intervention is prevention. The problem is that since stress is called the silent killer, because we don't see it until it's too late. And a lot of companies are like, well, if I'm not seeing the problem, how do I know it exists? And the issue with stress is that when it shows up, it's already too late.
Yeah.
It's not too late. I mean, it's not like, oh, you're never going to come back from it, but it means you've
that's
an important threshold.
That is true though. Like there is a not, like, for example, I've had 2 friends that have committed suicide. Yeah. Right. And the first thing everyone said, obviously everyone was devastated, but really, that person, we never knew. They were always happy. They're always this, like, you like, and even when I started talking about my anxiety and depression and, you know, being out for days, sometimes weeks, and struggling, I continue to struggle. People are like, really, you, Chris? Like, no one can see it, you know. And most people do a relatively good job of covering it up and hiding it very well.
Because it's not socially acceptable, you know, and it hasn't been. It's I don't want to say a reason for ostracization, but even now, 85% of employees do not want to talk to their employer about mental health or say that they have mental health issues, because the conditioned response is, oh, crazy, don't want to get involved in that, right? As opposed to like, I just actually have a situation that's gotten a little bit out of hand that needs tending to, that literally anyone could find themselves in. Yes, there are a couple of biomarkers. There's not one. There's things that, you know, may be predisposed. There may be a little bit of genetics, but anyone can fall into a situation of anxiety, depression, or mental health disorder. It's not so unique.
No, not at all.
And especially after this pandemic, you know, which, whether we are aware of it or not, every single person is living, their body is responding in a trauma state. Most of us will have brain fog. We'll find that the inability to sort of project what the future is going to be, the uncertainty of the future, is what causes stress. And so whether we're aware of it or not, our bodies are hyper stressed right now. If we don't learn how to turn that mechanism down or off, that's where the problems start.
Yeah.
And especially if you don't have like a healthy lifestyle, you don't get exercise, you don't eat properly, you don't sleep properly. It's such boring advice. People are like, what can I do to control my stress? And I'm like, ugh.
Those are the 3 things that I say to people, because whenever I'm not eating well and not sleeping well and not exercising, my anxiety comes back with a vengeance. And it's a knock-on effect, because if I don't go gym, I end up not eating well, because I'm like, well, I didn't train, so whatever. Right. And then because I eat crap, then I don't sleep. And then again, it's just this vicious circle that I get back into. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's easy. And, you know, it's boring advice. And people are like, oh, I was really hoping you'd have something more interesting to say. But the most simple things you can do is make sure you're getting enough sleep. Eat properly, because there are the vitamin deficiencies, particularly with vitamin B, vitamin D, omegas. Those are crucial to your body being able to perform the functions that it needs to. And if it can't, it's like your body has to choose, like, do I send energy here? Do I send energy here? And inevitably some sort of vitamin deficiency ends up showing up on like an overexcitation of the amygdala. So we become hyperreactive. Or you slow down, so it's harder for you to detach from depressing thoughts. blah, blah, blah. But they're very easy. And then exercise is great because when you sweat out the cortisol. And so that just getting rid of that is already one way to deal with stress. Plus it produces endorphins, which makes you feel good. And the other thing with the food is also, we know now that 90% of our serotonin is produced in the gut. There's a direct link between the gut and the brain. So when digestion is backed up or is not working properly, we don't produce enough serotonin to regulate our sleep, to regulate our mood. So it's very boring advice. And there are other more interesting things to do. But the basic rules of how to keep yourself healthy: get some exercise, eat properly, and make sure you sleep.
Yeah, definitely. For me, like I've never had an anxiety attack. I've still felt anxious even when I'm doing all of those three things right, but I've never got to the point where I'm having an anxiety attack or in a really bad place when I've been training every day, or like training all the time, eating well, sleeping. Like it's never happened. Like, so, you know, even now I'm doing quite well at the moment actually, but I'm still feeling like, you know, even today I was a little bit anxious going to get my MRI scan, got to sit in this tube for an hour.
I know it well. I have to, after my eye thing, I have to go back every year and get an MRI. And so I 100% feel you sitting in that thing like, oh my God, is this gonna explode?
It's like, it's not even, it's anxiety about having an anxiety attack in that tube.
Yeah. Am I going to panic?
I'm not scared of the tube, or like, I don't care about sitting in there almost, but although it is not a nice experience, to be honest, especially the crazy noises and whatever. But I was like, what if I have a panic attack in this tube? And then because you start thinking about it, your heart starts racing, you start sweating and all these bad thoughts. And then it just, like I said, whatever your mind, whatever you think, you manifest in your body, right?
Yes. Literally. It shows up.
Yeah. What are some other things that we can do though? We mentioned those, but what are some of those other things that we can do to build resilience and manage stress in real time? So if people are feeling anxious or overwhelmed.
Okay. Well, so one of, there's sort of different interventions for obviously each brand of, a reaction. Depression tends to be an inability to detach from the past, which is that much of the thought is focused on what I should have done, what could have been, what happened. Whereas anxiety tends to be projections of the future.
Yes, it's the opposite. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because there's no way you can, and this is why the brain spins out, is because it's looking for certainty, but there is obviously no certainty in the future. Mm-hmm. So anxiety, once you start thinking about like, how is that meeting going to go? Or I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. We also have a negativity bias in the brain, which is, so we're more attentive to threats because you don't want.
That's how we stayed alive.
It's exactly how we stay alive, because the person who took that extra 2 seconds to be like, is that a tiger, is no longer with us, you know? So we have inherited evolutionarily the ability to be quick and like keep an eye out for like, is that a danger? Is that a danger? Is that a danger? What it means though, is that when we're projecting things into the future, the first thought is always negative. I had a coach who once said to me, no one is ever worried about being too pretty, too thin, or too rich, right? We're always just assuming the worst. Now, one of the things that I like to do, because I myself am a recovering control freak. So I like to know what's going to happen. Is it going to go well? How are things going to do? Blah, blah, blah. So my anxiety is around that as well. And in the event that there is no known future and we tell ourselves, oh, that could go really bad, match it. Yes, it could, because you don't want to ignore the fear. You want to actually embrace it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You want to be like, yes, thank you, brain. Like, actually, I literally talk to my brain as if it was somebody else. Like, yes, thank you, brain, for giving me that concern. You're right. It could go wrong, but it also could go right. So what do we need to do to put ourselves maybe more in favor of it being right? So literally talking yourself out of the fear, or just going into it, like interview your own thoughts. That's going to go really bad. Okay, why? Like, what could happen? And then, well, okay.
And also your brain wants you to rationalize it as well.
And the fact that it wants a solution is what the brain wants.
Right? Why am I feeling this way?
It's like, you've made me worried about something now. At least give me the satisfaction that you're doing something about it, right? That you're going to try and solve it. So when you like start to interview your own brain and your own thoughts, it's almost like you're making an action plan. It feels heard. And so I kind of always like to think, I have sort of two analogies for the brain. One is an overzealous intern, which if you don't give your intern very good directions, it can make a mess, right? And so that's, the brain wants to help you, but because we're not aware of the fact that we actually control our thoughts and the things that happen, we tend to feel like it's running us, which isn't really the case. And the other is very scared child. So how would I talk to a frightened child in this moment and explain to them, like being the adult in the room? Now, both of those scenarios requires a metacognitive step up where we realize that we are the bosses of our own thought processes.
Almost like stepping outside of your own brain.
Exactly. Where we start to separate ourselves. And this is very much in the Buddhist tradition, which I am not.
That's how I deal with when I'm going to have a panic attack. If I feel like I'm going to have a panic attack, I start having that conversation you're describing.
And
I'm like, exactly Chris, right. You know you've never died of an anxiety attack. You know right. That you literally, it cannot hurt you. So, you know, even in some of the therapy sessions I've had, is like the fear is what? Oh, I can't breathe. And then what? Oh, I'm going to die. That's what your brain's thinking, right? That's what's happening. But you know that's not going to happen. So then I start talking through it with myself, and I'm like, you're fine.
Yes.
And 99.9% of the time, I don't have a panic attack. I just have the feeling
that it's coming.
That it's coming, and then I can deal with it. In the past, I couldn't deal with it, and it just went, full blown panic attack. Didn't know what was going on. Oh my God, I'm dying. And I didn't know what was happening, which is the scariest part. And for people having them for the first time, they will know what I mean. If you can remember the first time you had one, you're like, whoa, like what was that?
Yeah.
But now I can talk myself through it, or call a friend, or now, because I'm talking about it, I can call a family member or a friend and be like, this is how I'm feeling, and just have a conversation and just kind of calm myself down again.
And the thing is it's not even, so like, yes, it starts with us. And some people don't like it when I say that, because it's like, oh, well, you're blaming me for my anxiety. And that's not what I mean. What I mean is that because we're not aware of the dynamics in our brain, we can accidentally think ourselves into an anxiety attack.
I've done that so many times. That's 99% of my, like I will think a negative thought and then think myself further and further and further and further and down a rabbit hole. And what if this, what if that, what if this, what if that? And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, panicking. And
when you know that it's like, it's just your amygdala freaking out, like just releasing a ton of chemical energy, electrochemical energy that's like, oh, wait, and so then it's going to start moving. And that's where the like
adrenaline comes from. Yeah. And you feel
it sends signals to change your breathing, to change your heart rate. And you're like,
you got to run now. The lion's coming. The lion's coming, you got to run.
And what you do there is exactly what you were saying. You want to engage your prefrontal cortex, which means that because he loses power when the amygdala takes over, because the amygdala is like, nah, I got this. Like, you sit down, son, I'm driving now. Yeah. And what you have to do is slowly coach the keys out of his hand and so you can do things like the interview, like you interview your own thoughts. Another thing is count backwards from 100 to 1, skipping numbers. So 100, 98, 96, because you're so focused on something.
Oh, because it's hard to focus on it. You forget almost.
You forget to be anxious.
Yeah. So I do that as well. So like if I'm feeling anxious, I'll play computer games or listen to a podcast, basically anything to just trick my brain to distract it. Like,
and that's exactly right. You want to distract it and just put the attention completely somewhere else, where you have to, better if there's like a riddle involved, right? Or like, why do you have to focus on their tails? Or what should I make for dinner tonight? How do you say this in Icelandic? Like, you give yourself any sort of riddle or puzzle or something that focuses the energy to shift back forward.
Yeah.
And then you literally forget to be anxious.
I literally had a puzzle game on my mobile. And it was like with a little metal ball, and you have to get the metal ball from this side of the map to this side of the map, and you got it. And I literally would sometimes, for years on the way to and from work, I was just suffering, and I felt anxious on the way to work, from home for work, and the only way I got there was this little puzzle game. that I used to play and just like distract myself the entire way. And if I lost signal or I couldn't get into it, I'll start panicking as well. But for so long, you're right. It's so many things that we can do.
And each person has a different thing that they're comfortable with. Some people respond better to physical things. So like another thing you can do if you find yourself getting into a state of anxiety is literally just shake it out. Because you have, again, there's just a lot of activity that's building in your body that has nowhere to go. And that's that pressure, like that all of a sudden you feel like you've stuck your finger in a plug. And so you want to get it out and get rid of that tension. And so I'll do, my daughter suffers also from social anxiety. So one of the first things that I taught her was that when she's in that way, just close herself in her room, close her eyes, and like just literally shake it off until all of a sudden you'll feel like the energy comes down.
Is that why I want to move? So like when I feel anxious, I have to move. So like yes. I'll go out for a walk, get fresh air. Like if I move, I feel like I can't sit still. If I'm anxious, I cannot sit still. Like it makes it feel 10 times more worse. Well, like just even walking up and down the hallway, it feels better.
Your fight or flight is on. So you've got adrenaline running, you've got cortisol running, you've got sugar running through because it's glucose, there's like a ton of activity that's going on in the body at that moment. And so the idea of just sitting still, you could potentially freeze, like almost be paralyzed. I'm sure there's some people who are just like, can't do anything. But it's simply because of the buildup of the body's response. And the best way to get it out, like I said, either forget about it by engaging your prefrontal, or just shake it out as much as you can, or put on have your favorite headbanger or dance song and just put that on and lose it. Dance like nobody's watching kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those are three really good ways. Or use, as you said, media, to creative materials to shift your mood at will.
Yeah. Obviously, we've spoken about exercise, eating well, sleeping well. And we also spoke about what to do when you're in the moment. We used just one example of a panic attack as well. When you work with companies, what are some of the practical things that you do with employees and with employers to help them support their employees?
Well, so obviously I have my app, which is meant to help people shift their mood at will using creative materials designed according to the canons of mood induction. One of the most important things is to know your triggers. And so sometimes it's like we're in a bad mood and we don't even know it, or something's happened and we don't even know. The problem with the brain is that it has a dynamic where any behavior that you repeat, whether it be motor actions or thoughts or emotional responses, every time you repeat it, it gets more and more solidified in the brain and becomes more automatic. So maybe the first time somebody pisses you off, it took it may have even taken a minute or two to get mad at them. By the fifth time that you've seen that person and they're constantly pissing you off, you're mad when you see their name on the phone, right? It's like the brain's already ready. It's like, I already know this person's going to piss us off. So being conscious of what it is, like situations, places, people that tend to set you off, and doing kind of a post-mortem of after you've had an episode, maybe you freaked out at a coworker, afterwards be like, what about that? Why was I so mad? Is it the person? What were they doing? There tends to be 5 or 6 things that we all react to. Goal obstruction is one thing. We want to get from point A to point B and something puts in the middle, and that's a threat for us.
Yeah.
Lack of communication, our boss didn't complete because we don't have the information we need to get from point A to point B. So it's not my fault, it's his fault. He didn't tell me, blah, blah, blah. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. Because again, it all sorry, I was about to speak in Italian. It all is around uncertainty. Anytime you put the brain in a position of uncertainty, which is all day long, it's what do I do? I don't know. And so being aware of the things that cause you stress is the first step to being able to manage them.
Yeah.
Knowing that every time I see my mother-in-law, I lose my mind, then it's like, okay, I know that I need to like prepare beforehand. And I also need to have a strategy in place for when we're interacting, because I can't change her, but I can change me.
Should people run towards those fears and face them more? Does that help?
Yes.
Yes.
So
okay.
It's called exposure therapy. And yes, what happens is we usually tend to make up a set of maladaptive coping skills to circumvent our triggers. It's like, okay, I just won't get on a train ever again.
That's me, basically. Yeah.
But that becomes difficult, and it starts getting like it can impede your life, especially if you want to go to the top of the Empire State Building and you hate lifts. And so it takes a while usually. So basically everything that we have, like our fears, comes from some situation in our childhood where we lived a moment of panic and the brain made like a connection, like avoid.
And I know my one, by the way. So what happened is I got lost in the theme park when I was like 6 or 7.
Right.
And my parents couldn't find me, or no one could find me. And I had a panic attack.
Yeah.
And that was the first time.
And there's your aloneness.
That's it. Yeah. So like so that's where I only recently discovered that from having some conversations. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, why have I got this fear of being alone, or like this strange feeling that comes when I'm on my own? That's like, just all of a sudden, like I should be scared of something. And then I remembered that. And when I started thinking about it, like a ton of emotions flooded back. I was like, wow. And I remember how terrified I was just running around this theme park with feeling hopeless that I couldn't find anyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Completely unsafe. And it's not funny, but when I was doing one-on-one coaching, that would be the first thing I would say. So we would have kind of a conversation about how there's a sort of, I call it the initial wound, right? There's something happened, but because our brain isn't developed, we don't have the cognitive abilities to understand it, to see something in context. When I was 4 years old, my parents forgot me at Sunday school, right? And they went out for lunch. Now, the way I remember it is like, I was there for an eternity, but it could have easily been a minute and a half and I would have no idea. But because we're looking at it with eyes of a child, and so we don't have the capacity to fully process it, like, oh, actually this isn't scary, it's fine, there's like an exit right there, and there's
someone I can go over there and ask for help. You just don't know that. You just immediately panic. Yeah.
So this lives in our brain,
our subconscious mind,
as a connection. It's literally like a neuronal connection that as we get older and older, we start making associations to. And the associations become stronger. And so when I'll talk to people about like, what are you afraid of? Like, what's the obstacle? And I'll just say to them really quickly, what happened to you? Like, what's the first memory that comes into your mind about this? And without fail, they always bring it up because the subconscious is like, hey, here you go. I got it. I've just been waiting to tell somebody like this. So they always come up and people are always shocked. They're like, oh my God, I haven't thought about that in 15 years. And I'm like, but you now have a whole bunch of associations that you're playing out on a day-to-day basis from this situation. One of the things that I used to do in coaching is we would actually go back into, so there's a very powerful tool that they use in PTSD therapy, which is memory rescripting. And so the idea is to go back into the memory, like go back into it as a kid, but then rewrite it so you're safe. So you find your parents. So, and you repeat that memory again and again and again. And what happens is, you can actually supplant an old memory with a new one. So the one where you're like terrified and lost gets weaker and the other one becomes stronger. And that's how we sort of diffuse those foundational traumas, but our triggers are always related to something that happened to us when we were kids that we just didn't have the capacity to fully comprehend.
And just for everyone listening as well, it works both ways, right? So there's positive, the exact same thing on the positive equivalent of, you know, if you say constantly, I'm good at this, I'm great at that, it works the exact same way. So I always say to people, oh, I'm great at sports, you know, I've got great hand-eye coordination, and that now manifested itself without getting too fluffy. It's not fluffy at all, actually. The science is there in what I do. So like my friends and family, like, how the hell do you pick up a sport like that so fast? It's because I've been telling myself my entire life that I'm amazing at this.
Yeah.
And I am amazing at those things because I literally then I find the opportunities. Obviously there's hard work, but I find the opportunities there because it immediately makes sense to me, and I link those things together.
And that's, so, you know, some people I know in like the woo-woo, they talk about the law of attraction.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant.
You think it into being. And while I don't really know about that, it doesn't
work without the actions.
Yeah, exactly. You
Yeah.
can't dream yourself into, but what happens is because we have all these hidden beliefs, right, about ourselves and about what we're capable of, and whether we know it or not, they drive every single thing that we do. So if I think I can't cook, I'm going to obviously avoid it, right? To the point that, yeah, I've now avoided it forever. I can't cook. But if I said to myself, I don't know if I can cook because I've never tried, is already an alternative that leaves you wide open. And then if you're interested in it, what happens is, like you say, like, maybe I can cook, maybe I can cook. And then you start to focus attention. Where you put attention, action follows, right? Desire
exactly.
follows.
And then you get the outcome.
Like, oh, are we doing this? Now we want to cook. All right, cool. Let's do it. And then, yeah, maybe it doesn't come out, but you try, and then you perfect, and you try another thing. So the whole, like we were saying, whether you can or you can't is entirely up to you.
Yeah. No, whether you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. If you think you can't, it's like I ask people, one of the things that frustrates me in general life, and this is with a lot of people, is like, oh, I can't do that. You know, and I'm like, have you tried? They're like, oh no. So what? Yeah,
that drives me nuts.
You know, you can't do it yet. And they're like, no, I can't do it. I've never done it, so I can't do it. And that already, you're already lost. Like in my mind, if you're already, and as an entrepreneur, you cannot, for example, have that mindset. Yeah. You wouldn't have a company, because I am sales, marketing, operation, production, finance, creative, everything. So if I came in and started a company and said, I can't do that, I won't be here.
Well, then you wouldn't do it, which is
I probably wouldn't have made it here in the first place. Oh yeah, exactly. Most of the reason why people don't start a company is that inner voice that says, and I struggled for years, by the way, just for everyone listening, the reason I had the idea for the company maybe 2 years before I finally pulled the trigger, because I was like, what if I fail? What are my family going to think? What if I can't pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay for nursery? You know,
right. That's that negativity bias I was saying.
Exactly.
But then you come back in, you're like, well, what if I don't?
Yes, there you go. Exactly. What if I'm here? What if I'm still in this? What if I'm still on the way to work, to and from work every day, having panic attacks, anxious, depressed, because I have not looking forward to getting out of bed every day? That's worse.
Yeah.
So what would I rather do? Carry on living like that or risk failure?
And that's another really good exercise to do, even for like panic attacks, but to do beforehand, to rationalize it beforehand, be like, what is the worst that could happen?
That's what I do. I'm like, Chris, you can't die. Because before it was like, I can't breathe and I'm going to die. And it made me feel stupid when I was seeing someone about this and finally got some help after forever, just putting it off. And no one had ever asked me, why are you scared? And I'm like, well, I'm scared that I'm going to have a panic attack. But then what? Then I'm not going to be able to breathe properly. And then what? And I'm like, I'm going to die. And then it seems stupid because I was like, of course I'm not going to die. And then it was like, made it trivial to me. It made it seem like my anxiety is linked to having anxiety, which sounds crazy if you're listening. Like, I'm anxious of having an anxiety attack because the way it makes you feel. Right. But therefore that's the trigger. So it's like this vicious circle. But when it finally got to, but what's the worst going to happen, to your point? Nothing. The worst that can happen is I'm going to calm down again and I'm going to...
Right. Or you have the panic attack and then...
Yeah.
and then it's over. And then the next day happens. And that's the thing. That's what I mean about like the interviewing, like get into like a whole Socratic questioning with everything that you believe. Like even the thoughts that you tell yourself, it's like, oh, I can't cook. And it's like, why not? Like, did we try? Like,
and
have
if
we
you,
ever done this?
I love that. So, and that applies to everything. And
Yes.
I'm really bad. I'm amazing at doing that when it comes to business, when it comes to sports, creative, anything creative. I'm like, I have that same positive approach, or that I'm questioning everything. When it comes to my anxiety, not so great. So I definitely need to get better at challenging that part of like why, like it was so bad at one point where I couldn't even go to get my hair cut because I was like, what if I go and get my hair cut? What if I have a panic attack and they've cut half my hair?
Right.
How stupid is that?
Well,
I'm saying it out loud.
about it now, but I know when you're in the throes of it.
Yeah, I'm like, what if I'm sitting here? Like, that's how bad it got. It was like, I'm sitting here getting my hair cut. I can't leave because half my hair's cut. But what happens if and then again, it's like all of a sudden I start sweating. I'm like,
even that, what's the worst you happen? You come back and you get it finished the next day. So I love to use, like I said, my daughter has social anxiety, and she used to have to like present in front of class and like do
that's
her
tough.
presentations and stuff. And so I frequently show her, I don't remember if it was the Grammys. I think it was the Grammys. I show her Adele's performance that she did for George Michael, where she started off, she messed it up. She stopped and she went back and she started again. And I said, this woman is in front of a billion people. And she knew, like, I was like, what's the worst that could happen? Are you going to mess up in front of a billion people? No, I was like, she messed up. What happened to her? Did she die? Did she fall down? Or did she just say, I need a minute, came back in? I was like, so even if you mess up, just like, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
Take a break, say, I need to start over, get myself composed. There are no consequences. That's the thing. We make up the consequences. Like, what if everybody's going to laugh at me? Okay. And like, what are the negative consequences?
That's the part I'm struggling with, Erika. Like, I know these things now. I've done the research, but I'm still struggling to not feel it. So like, I'm still feeling anxious, even though I know it. Yeah. Even though I know I'm okay. I know I'm not going to die. I know these things, but I'm like, why am I still feeling it? And that's the part I'm still struggling with to get over. And
that's the dynamics that I told you, is that like anything that we do consistently, the brain gets on board and helps you do it faster. So the more you consistently talk yourself out of your anxiety, the easier it will get over time.
I feel like we make this as a Chris Rainey therapy session, this episode. this episode. I hope everyone else learned a lot as much as I did. This is so cool. I'm super happy that we're having this conversation. I feel like we need part 2 because we've run out of time.
Happy to be here. Oh no. Well,
yeah.
We can tackle the depression next time.
Yeah, exactly. That was just part 1 as well. But where can people learn more about the work that you do and reach out to you and get in touch?
Well, I'm obviously on LinkedIn, Erika with the impossible last name, which I'm sure you'll see. And then at my website at moodally.com, or Instagram, moodally.wellness, Facebook.
Mm-hmm. And then what does the work look like with clients? Is it like the app, a mixture of the app and then in person, or say in person, virtual in this day and age?
It depends. So I've been collaborating with companies differently. I'm working with a bank right now, and I'm going to be speaking at some of their planning sessions. We found some really, really interesting information, not only on how mood and stress affect your productivity, but also how mood affects the client relationship, particularly the client's mood. So that's been really interesting. And I'll be doing all of their like fall planning meetings. And then we're going to like maybe also do some one-on-one stuff with their key leaders. They all have access to the app. So I can either come in and speak, work one-on-one. I have courses like a 3-hour course, 9-hour course, or an 18-hour course. They go into different levels and stuff like that, but it's all there. So it's really, my mission is really, I say it's about building better workplaces one mood at a time, to really help people And like I said I guess we were chatting at the beginning, but when you help people learn the skill of emotional self-regulation, it not only improves their productivity, their creativity, their problem solving, it's also good for them. So it's like good for the company and good for them. It works on multiple layers at the same time. There's also a lot of research that shows that people who learn these skills, that it then sort of has a halo effect in the rest of their life. And there's a positive spillover into the personal sphere. They feel more self-confident in their abilities to tackle the things that come at them. So it's really exciting and I think really important work that I try to do so people don't end up like me.
Yeah.
Sitting in a meeting with lawyers trying to figure out if they're losing their vision or not.
Where can they download the app, or do they have to come to you personally? Can you is it a self-service app or not?
It's only through the company right now. So.
All right, and that's fine. They have to reach out to you. So I'll put if you look in the description, you'll find Erika's email address, the website. Everything will be there. So make sure you check it out. Apart from that, Erika, have a good day, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you.